What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. It is Thursday, and I want to do a quick video for you guys talking about should the Falcons re-sign Vic Beasley after this season. And I'm going to break that down in this video. I got some interesting stats for you guys. I went and looked up some statistics and some stats to back up what I believe the Falcons should do. But definitely leave your comments below after this video of whether you think we should bring Vic Beasley back and why, or if we should cut Vic Beasley or not re-sign Vic Beasley because he'll be a free agent after this season. But let's jump right into the video, man. Personally, I think we should re-sign Vic Beasley after this season. I've been going back and forth with it of, well, if it's at the right price, go ahead and bring Vic Beasley back. You heard a lot of things that Vic Beasley was on the trading block at one point when free agency opened up, and they were saying that no teams was interested in Vic Beasley. I really just think that because they knew that Vic Beasley is a free agent after this season, they could go after him then. And a lot of teams didn't want to give up draft capital for Vic Beasley. I don't really believe the narrative that no team was interested in signing Vic Beasley. I just feel like teams would rather wait to the end of the season and in the offseason if they want to make a pitch at signing Vic Beasley, they can without giving up a lot of draft capital, because the Falcons was asking, for, of course, for some draft picks for Vic Beasley. And a lot of teams, I think, shied away from doing that because, you know, they could possibly get Vic Beasley at a lower price tag. But I feel like we should keep Vic Beasley after going in and looking at some stats of some other players that came in the same amount of time or around the same time that Vic Beasley got drafted and came into the season. We did draft Vic Beasley in 2015 out of the University of Clemson. He hasn't been a terrible player for the Falcons. He's had actually some productive seasons for us. He did lead the league in sacks in 2016. And I think that a lot of the Falcons fans and a lot of the media has spun a negative narrative towards Vic Beasley's name. Don't get me wrong, he hasn't balled out for the Atlanta Falcons. But when I went and looked at some numbers, I was really astonished and really drawn back by how well Vic Beasley actually has done since he's been in Atlanta for the 4 or 5 seasons that he's been here with the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump right into the video and give y'all some breakdowns of what I was able to find out by looking up some stats. The first player that I'm gonna compare Vic Beasley to, first I'm gonna give you Vic Beasley's numbers over the last couple seasons that he's been with the team. I'm gonna give you his career stats. So Vic Beasley in 2015, his rookie season, he had 5 sacks. In 2016, Vic Beasley led the league in sacks with 15.5 sacks. In 2017 and 2016, that was the year we went to the Super Bowl. Remind you guys, in 2017, he had 5 sacks. 5 sacks. In 2018, he had 5 sacks. And then in 2019, which is this year, which the season is still progressing, we have about 3 games left. He had 6 sacks this season. With a total for over his career, so over between 2015 and 2019, Vic Beasley has accumulated a total of 35.5 sacks in his career so far with the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm going to compare him to a couple players that came in around the same time that he came in. First, I'm going to start out with the more big names that's in the league that get more respect than I feel like Vic Beasley gets far as on their name and stuff like that, far as in the media. A lot of players that get a lot of glitz and glamour over Vic Beasley. The first player that I compared him to was Jadeveon Clowney. If you remember Jadeveon Clowney in college, he played at the University of South Carolina. He had that big tackle in the bowl game against Michigan where he hit the running back, I believe it was, in the backfield, and the guy's helmet popped off, and it was all over SportsCenter. It was all in the media that Jadeveon Clowney was going to be this great pass rusher, and he was going to be the next great thing, that he was going to set the league on fire and all of those things. And a lot of us have bought into the hype. He was traded this year from the Houston Texans, who drafted him, I believe, with the #1 pick. Actually, in 2014, he was drafted. So he's been in the league 1 year before. He got in the league 1 year before Vic Beasley was Jadeveon Clowney. But I'm gonna give you Jadeveon Clowney's numbers so you guys can see what I'm saying about how Vic Beasley has had a negative. The narrative around Vic Beasley has been very negative, where for certain players that the media likes or that have a bunch of highlights like from college and stuff like that, and have a lot of top 10 plays on SportsCenter, we get kind of sucked into the media and what they tell us instead of going in and looking at the numbers and looking at the statistics ourselves. So let's look at Jadeveon Clowney's numbers. So 2014, I don't count against him. He had 0 sacks his rookie season, but it says he only played 4 games due to injury. So we're going to give him a pass for that season. 2015, he had 4.5 sacks. 2016, he had 6 sacks. 2017, he had 9.5 sacks. 2018, he had 9 sacks, which was last year, and then 2019, he has 3 sacks so far this season, playing with the Seattle Seahawks, who he was traded to. So a total of his career, Jadeveon Clowney only has 32 sacks, where Vic Beasley has 35.5 sacks. So Vic Beasley basically has 3.5 more sacks than Jadeveon Clowney, which was kind of astonishing to me because I just knew going to look at Jadeveon Clowney's numbers that his numbers were going to be better than Vic Beasley. And I feel like half the problem is a lot of these players, even though I watch a lot of the other games that are played on Sunday other than the Atlanta Falcons, the only team that I really focused on, and now that I have my YouTube channel, the only team that I really follow like that is the Atlanta Falcons. So a lot of these other teams and other players, I really don't get a chance to really put a microscope and take a look at how well their individual stats are. I only see how well their teams are doing. So mind you, Vic Beasley has never played with a great player as far as another great defensive end other than Dwight Freeney, the last year of his career when he played with the Falcons, when he was like on his last leg, basically. Dwight Freeney was a veteran at that point. That was the best pass rusher probably that Vic Beasley has ever played with. Mind you, Jadeveon Clowney has been playing with J.J. Watt pretty much in his prime. He's been playing with J.J. Watt since he first got drafted. And you know when teams play against J.J. Watt, they're double teaming J.J. Watt pretty much on every play, meaning that Jadeveon Clowney basically has just to beat one-on-one blocks pretty much his whole career, other than this season now that he's playing with the Seattle Seahawks. So you would think that Jadeveon Clowney, a lot of people call Vic Beasley a bust. You would think people would be calling Jadeveon Clowney a bust because he's been playing with better teammates on a defensive line. The Houston Texans has a better defensive line, or has had a better defensive line over his career than Vic Beasley has had with the Atlanta Falcons. The only player that I could say has been dominant since Vic Beasley has been in the league is Grady Jarrett. But he's not a defensive end. And with J.J. Watt, he's a player where you can move him inside, outside. They've done a lot of different things with J.J. Watt. So you would think that Jadeveon Clowney would definitely have more sacks in his career than Vic Beasley. But if you ask the media or if you ask any random fan that just casually watch football and you ask them which player is the better player or who has accumulated more stats since they've been in the league or more sacks, you would, I bet you any amount of money that most people would say Jadeveon Clowney is a much better player than Vic Beasley, or that he has better sack numbers than Vic Beasley. But let's move on. So basically, Vic Beasley has more sacks playing one less season, even though Jadeveon Clowney, that first season that he played when Vic Beasley was still in college, he only played 4 games with 0 sacks. So you kind of see what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that Vic Beasley is a better player than Jadeveon Clowney, because I probably would, if they gave me a choice, Vic Beasley or Jadeveon Clowney, I probably would take Jadeveon Clowney over Vic Beasley. And the only reason I possibly would take Jadeveon Clowney over Vic Beasley if I was a GM of a team is because Jadeveon Clowney is a little bit bigger than Vic Beasley, and he sets the edge better in the run game. So he does a better job at penetrating in the backfield against the run than Vic Beasley does. As you know, Vic Beasley is not the best at setting the edge when he's playing defensive end because he is a smaller outside linebacker or defensive end. Jadeveon Clowney outweighs Vic Beasley for about 20 pounds. He's about 20 pounds heavier. When I looked it up, Vic Beasley was like 236 pounds, and Jadeveon Clowney goes about 255, 260. So he outweighs Vic Beasley by at least 20 pounds. So that does sometimes make a difference in far as when it comes to setting the edge and having strength and being harder to block when you're comparing Vic Beasley and when you're comparing Jadeveon Clowney or a player like in that ilk. So let's look at another player that came out around the same time as Vic Beasley and just was signed. Another player that you may know, D Ford. He was a player that was drafted, I believe, by the San Francisco 49ers. No, actually, he was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, but now he plays with the San Francisco 49ers. This is his first season. They signed him in the offseason. So let's look at D Ford's numbers. So D Ford got in the league also in 2014, just like Jadeveon Clowney. So he's played one more season than Vic Beasley. And I believe D Ford also was injured in his rookie season, if I'm not mistaken. But it says in 2014, he had 1.5 sacks. In 2015, D Ford had 2015, he had 4 sacks. In 2016, D Ford had 10 sacks. In 2017, D Ford had 2 sacks. In 2018, D Ford had 13 sacks, which was his best season. And then 2019, which is this year, so far he has 6.5 sacks. So over his career, D Ford has 37 total sacks, which is 2 more sacks or 1.5 more sacks than Vic Beasley has had over his career. Because I told you Vic Beasley had 35.5 career sacks, and D Ford has 37 sacks with one more season under his belt because he played in 2014 when Vic Beasley was still in college. So you see what I'm talking about. A lot of people was talking about D Ford when they signed with the 49ers, and a lot of the media and things of that nature talk about D Ford being, when he was in Kansas City, that he was one of the he's one of the premier up and coming pass rushers, which I agree. I think D Ford is a very good player, and he's an up and coming player. But I also think that Vic Beasley kind of gets overshadowed by playing in Atlanta. And a lot of Falcon players that play, with the Falcons, being that we're not in the biggest market and we don't have any Super Bowl trophies like in our past history because we've never won a Super Bowl. I think that a lot of our players, that gets held against them when it comes to voting for Pro Bowls and when it comes to getting notoriety in the media. You don't hear a lot about Atlanta Falcon players, only when the players are doing bad. So that was another player, like I said, came out around the same time Vic Beasley came out, and he only has 1.5 sacks more than Vic Beasley, and he just got paid. Another player that I wanted to look at is Preston Smith. He was another player that was signed in this offseason by the Green Bay Packers, and he was a big signing for the Green Bay Packers. He has helped turn that defense around at defensive end. He was drafted by the Washington Redskins, and he played there for about four seasons. And now this is his first season with the Packers. So let's take a look at Preston Smith's numbers. So Preston Smith, over his career so far, in 2015, Preston Smith in his rookie season had 8 sacks. 2016, he had 4.5 sacks. 2017, he had 8 sacks. 2017, he had 8 sacks. 2018, he had 4 sacks. And then 2019, he had 11.5 sacks. So over his career, and in 2019, of course, the season is still going, as I said. So right now, he currently has 11.5 sacks, and the season isn't over yet. So he's having a pretty productive season. And he's having actually his most productive season since being in Washington, because his highest sack total, if you heard me, was 8 sacks, which was in 2017 and 2015. But over his career, Preston Smith has a total of 36 sacks. So he has a half a sack more than Vic Beasley has, which I told you Vic Beasley over his career has 35 and a half sacks. So he has basically point 0.5, a half of a sack more than Vic Beasley has over his career. And and remind you, Preston Smith was just signed a pretty lucrative deal this offseason with the Green Bay Packers. So now you see what I'm talking about. Like, you've been hearing people talk about Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith being big signings, and he's another up and coming pass rusher, one of the better pass rushers in the game, up and coming, one of the big offseason free agent signings. So this is why I'm telling you guys that Vic Beasley and some of these other guys that are being signed and that don't get the same respect that some of these guys are getting, like a Vic Beasley doesn't get the notoriety that Grady Jarrett's on our team doesn't get the notoriety that they deserve or haven't gotten the notoriety. Grady Jarrett is starting to get some notoriety now, but he didn't get a ton of notoriety over the couple seasons where he's basically been consistent, and he just got paid in the offseason, Grady Jarrett. So I really think that Vic Beasley has a chance to resign, and if I was the GM of the Falcons, I definitely would seriously look at re-signing Vic Beasley. Another player I took a look at, since I just mentioned him, and he was also a part of that Green Bay Packers free agency signing, was Zadarius Smith, who played with the Baltimore Ravens. He was another player coming from Baltimore. I was astonished as well looking at his numbers. I just knew that his numbers was going to be great because he played for Baltimore, who always has a stout defense and always has been known for good defense. I assumed that he would, definitely have much better numbers than Vic Beasley, and I was actually surprised that his numbers wasn't better than Vic Beasley. So Zadarius Smith, let's look at his numbers. Zadarius Smith, 2015, he had 5.5 sacks, he came in the same year that Vic Beasley was drafted, 2015, by the Baltimore Ravens. He had 5.5 sacks in 2015. 2016, he had 1 sack. In 2017, he had 3.5 sacks. In 2018, he had 8.5 sacks. And then now in 2019, Zadarius Smith has a total of 10 sacks so far on this season with the Green Bay Packers. So him and Preston Smith are having the best years of their career, basically the best seasons of their career. They're finally in the double digits. Neither one of those guys before getting paid ever had over 10 sacks in a season until now with the Green Bay Packers. So this is what I talk about when people say, or the fans of Atlanta or whoever that hates on Vic Beasley or says Vic Beasley is stealing money or Vic Beasley is not that good of a player. I really think that we just have really, really high expectations because he was a first-round draft pick, and we just have extra high expectations because he led the league in sacks. But this is why I say that I don't believe the media when they say when they were saying that no team in the NFL is interested in signing Vic Beasley because nobody traded for him during the trade deadline when we said he was on the trading block. This is why I say you got to be very careful with believing the NFL Network and believing the media, because the media will always spin whatever narrative they want. But if you don't go behind the media and research yourself, you could be easily swayed from left to right, believing whatever the media says. If you just take what they say, I always take what the media says with a grain of salt, but I always like to go in and do my own research and go take a look to see, what they're saying. Is that correct, or is everybody just following the leader, basically? Are everybody just, going by what they hear and they're not actually going in and look into what the media is saying themselves? So when I went in and take a look, I'm seeing that the media is saying all of these things about Vic Beasley and no team wants him during the trade deadline, and he's like really regressed and he's not that good of a player and he's inconsistent. I really don't believe a lot of things that the media is saying. Now, I can say that Vic Beasley has had times where he's been inconsistent, but what I'm trying to tell you is that's pretty much all of these young players in the league. And I feel like that's one of the biggest issues with the Atlanta Falcons fans, mainly because I can't really speak for other fans because I follow the Atlanta Falcons and my YouTube channel is directed towards the Atlanta Falcons. And I follow, the Atlanta Falcons. I read a lot of content for the Atlanta Falcons. I watch a lot of the other YouTubers and things of that nature. But looking into things for myself personally, I think a lot of these players, these young players, just need time to develop. So all these people that's saying that the Falcons need to go after, tank and go after Chase Young, I'm telling you now, when Chase Young comes into the league, I'm telling you right now, his rookie season or for the first couple seasons, it's going to it's going to be an adjustment period for Chase Young because the NFL is a grown man's league. It's not a young kids league. It's not a kids league. So what he's doing at Ohio State and what you do in college is a totally different thing from what you can do in the NFL because the NFL is a grown man's game. It's a veteran's game. It's not necessarily the young pups game. And once teams get tape on you, like we see how Lamar Jackson is setting the world on fire, and we seen Pat Mahomes last year set the world on fire. But look at Pat Mahomes this year. Even though he had some injuries, and he's still a great player, but last year he threw, I think, 50 touchdown passes, and this year he's under 30 touchdown passes so far. I think he only has like 20-some touchdown passes. That's the league kind of catching up to what Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs were doing. And like I said, every player is going to have their up and down years. So you can't just assume, okay, because like Vic Beasley led the league in sacks in 2016, which was an accomplishment. You can't assume that every single season Vic Beasley is going to have 15 and a half sacks because that's not realistic. I actually went and looked up Von Miller because I consider him one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. And when I looked at how many sacks Von Miller has on the season, it only says that Von Miller has seven and a half sacks this season, where Vic Beasley has 6 sacks. So Von Miller, who's a NFL Super Bowl MVP, and got a huge contract with the Denver Broncos a couple seasons ago after winning the Super Bowl, he only has 1.5 sacks more than Vic Beasley. So that should tell you right there that all of these narratives that Vic Beasley isn't a good player and he's not a quality defensive end or outside linebacker is just the media spinning the narrative in the way that they want to spin the narrative. Because if we be quite honest about our Atlanta Falcons and quite honest about our defense this year and our team in general, the Falcons have had an up and down season. Like nobody on the Atlanta Falcons defense has played excellent this year or hasn't struggled this year. Pretty much every single player on the Atlanta Falcons this year has had their ups and downs. The only player we can really say that been the most consistent all season long, I would say, is Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett pretty much has balled every single game this season. And even with Grady Jarrett, it was one game, I think it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where when we got beat by the Buccaneers, Grady Jarrett, a lot of people talked about how Grady Jarrett didn't show up and how he struggled in the game and he didn't wreak havoc like he always does. So that goes to show you that every players have their up and down games and have up and down seasons. So with Vic Beasley, as much as you want to believe that he's not a consistent player and he's not a good player or a solid defensive end or outside linebacker, that's not the case because the numbers are proving otherwise and numbers don't lie. Men, as Richard Sherman once said, men and women lie, numbers don't lie. Like those sacks that he got and he accumulated, he actually did that. Him leading the league in sacks, nobody can ever take that away from him. And a lot of these guys that I just named, pretty much all of these guys that I just named in this list, I don't believe any of these guys on this list that I named has won a sack championship, meaning led the league in sacks over their career. I don't believe none of these guys have done that. So Vic Beasley has definitely accomplished a lot in his short period with the team. A lot of the guys on this list that I named has also never had a Super Bowl appearance. And I'm not just putting that on one player because I know when Vic Beasley did lead the league in sacks and stuff when we got to the Super Bowl, it wasn't just because of him, because one player cannot lead a team to a Super Bowl. You need all guys to pitch in. The whole team is a team effort when it comes to getting to a Super Bowl. But we got to say that him leading the league in sacks in 2016 definitely played a part into us getting to the Super Bowl that year in 2016. Because not only did he lead our team in sacks, but he led the league in sacks. So that's definitely an accomplishment. So I definitely believe that Vic Beasley deserves a new contract. As much as Atlanta Falcons fans may not want to hear this, I really think that Vic Beasley does deserve a new contract with the Atlanta Falcons. But I want to jump right into a couple of other players I looked into. This year, I wanted to look and see who was leading the league in sacks and to break down their career and see if they were one of the players that came in around the same time as Vic Beasley And sure enough, the player that's leading the league in sacks actually came out the same year Vic Beasley did in 2015. And that player's name is Shaq Barrett or Shaquille Barrett. He was a player that was drafted by the Denver Broncos, and he played a couple seasons with Von Miller, who I was just talking about, the Super Bowl MVP. And when I looked at his numbers, this was another one that I was really appalled at and shocked to see that even though he's having a career year this year, when he was with his previous team, the Denver Broncos, he didn't. His numbers wasn't too impressive. So let's break down his numbers over his career since 2015. In his rookie season, 2015, Shaq Barrett had 5.5 sacks. In 2016, he had 1.5 sacks. In 2017, Shaq Barrett had 4 sacks. In 2018, he had 3 sacks. So his numbers were really, really pedestrian. So the Buccaneers basically just took a chance on signing him, and it ended up panning out because maybe they seen something on tape. Maybe they seen that the Broncos wasn't using Shaq Barrett in the correct way, which could really be shocking to me because they do have Von Miller and they've had excellent pass rushers, DeMarcus Ware when they won the Super Bowl. So Denver usually has a solid defense. So I don't know the reasoning, behind why Shaq Barrett or Shaquille Barrett hadn't broke out when he played with Denver. The only thing I can think about is what I was just saying about Vic Beasley and about a lot of these young players being inconsistent, is that we have to be patient and give these guys time to develop, because a lot of these guys, when they come into the NFL, they haven't developed any pass rush moves. In college, they're basically just using whatever their strength is. And a huge percentage of players that play in college will not play in the NFL. A small percentage of college players will play in the NFL. So maybe that's another reason that they've been, a lot of these guys have been struggling. That struggle when they first come in the league is because when they're in college, they can use like Vic Beasley. I hear a lot of people say he doesn't have any pass rush moves or he hasn't developed any moves. Part of the reason that a lot of these guys don't have moves is because in college, as I talked about, the NFL is a grown man's league. In college, he could just use his speed rush and pretty much dominate the competition. Like I'm telling you guys about Chase Young and a lot of these young guys that are coming out in the draft. A lot of those guys haven't developed moves. A lot of those guys just use one move, and if that one move can defeat 90% of the competition in college or in the amateurs, then a lot of those guys stick with what's working, which makes sense. Like, why would you stop? If someone can't stop you from going right in basketball, like using your right hand and you're a dominant right-handed player or a dominant left-handed player, laying the ball up and stuff like that, why go away from something that someone can't stop? Like I said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I feel like that's a lot of the problems with a lot of these guys coming out of college is a lot of these pass rushers really don't have a lot of moves. A lot of them are just speed rushers, but the competition is not as stiff in college, so they can get away with 90% of the times they can, beat the competition by using whatever their best speed rush is. And a lot of these guys coming into the league haven't developed pass rush moves and haven't developed, a lot of techniques and stuff like that to get better. But that's the job of the coaching staff, of a lot of the coaching staff's job. Once these guys become professionals, it's their job to cater to these guys and work with these guys and mentor these guys and help these guys get past pass rush moves. And also, it's the GM's job to bring in veteran players to help these young guys along on learning how to use pass rush moves. Like, if you remember years ago, like I said, in 2016, when Vic Beasley led the league in sacks, he had one of the best sack masters in the locker room giving him tricks to the trade in Dwight Freeney. He was here to help Vic Beasley and those young guys develop pass rush moves. And he had Jonathan Babineau, who was able to help Grady Jarrett learn how to play the defensive tackle position. So this is why it's important to have veteran guys on the team to be able to help nurture these young guys and bring these guys along to become better players. And that's what I feel like it's kind of been lacking. And that's what I was really discouraged by Vic Beasley in the offseason when Dan Quinn told him that he wanted him to come to OTAs and, be there so he could work with him hands-on in learning pass rush moves. I really think that Vic Beasley missed out on the opportunity to learn some pass rush moves and to develop more than just that speed rush that he uses. That he could develop a bull rush. He could develop that club chop that Adrian Claiborne uses. And I feel like that was one of the biggest, one of the big issues, and has been one of the biggest Achilles heels of Vic Beasley's game, is him not having a counter to his speed rush, another move, a swim move, a counter, a spin move like Dwight Freeney used to use, a club chop, like I was saying, like Adrian Claiborne on our team uses. He definitely needs to develop another move other than his speed rush, even if it's a bull rush or some type of move the way he uses his hands, whether it's a spin move or whether it's that club chop. So I really think that Vic Beasley has time. He's still a young player, and I really feel like he deserves to get paid. Just looking at all of the numbers that I just gave you guys, I don't know if I mentioned to you guys the total number, of how many sacks Shaq Barrett has in his career, but he had 29 and a half sacks over his career was Shaq Barrett. And like I said, this is the first season in his career, because right now Shaq Barrett is the leader in sacks in the whole NFL with 15 and a half sacks. So it looks like he's starting to develop. But I also feel like some of the reason that Shaq Barrett is starting to break out too is he's playing with a better defensive line, because he has Ndamukong Suh on the line with him. He has Vita Vea on the line with him. And I really feel like that's helping Shaq Barrett, because those guys on the inside at the defensive tackle position are battling a lot of double teams, where it leaves him on one-on-one against either a left or right tackle, or against a tight end, or against a running back, where he's able to get after the quarterback. And that's another thing that I feel like the Falcons need to do in this offseason, is we really need to beef up our defensive line, especially in the middle of the defensive line. Grady Jarrett really needs a running partner next to him, whether that's Derek Brown, which it doesn't look like it's going to happen at this point because we're the 8th pick in the draft right now. But even if we can get another solid plugger and another guy that can partner up with Grady Jarrett in the middle, I really think that will free up Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley and help those guys get after the quarterback, because guys are not able to chip, guys are not able to help out, because they're going to have to worry about Grady Jarrett and whoever his running partner is collapsing the pocket. Because I say this all the time, and I think people really look over it. The best pass rush you can have is in the middle of your defensive line. It's not having edge rushers. Edge rushers are good to have, but having good nose tackles and guys in the middle of your defensive line, they have the most threat to a quarterback. If you ever watch Tom Brady, and if you've ever heard him do interviews and talk about pass rushers, the thing that Tom Brady and most quarterbacks hate, Drew Brees, the best pocket passers in the league, or the greatest quarterbacks in the league of all time, they'll tell you the worst type of pressure coming from a defensive line is right at you in your face, up the middle of the offensive line, at the guard and center position. That's the worst place to have pressure consistently coming from. If you have two great nose tackles or two good guys in the middle of your defense, that's what they always say, the best teams are built from the inside out. Meaning, if you have two guys in the middle like a Warren Sapp, or if you have like the Williams wall when the Vikings had Pat Williams and Kevin Williams in the middle, or like the Vikings now, how they have Linval Joseph in the middle. If you have two big guys in the middle, if you look at the teams that have the best defensive lines in the league, most of them have big pluggers and big guys in the middle of their defense that anchor their defense. If you looked at all of those New England Patriot teams, they had Vince Wilfork. Now they got a guy named by the last name of Guy, Guy. I think it's Lawrence Guy or something like that. It's a huge guy that plays in New England right now in the middle. His last name is Guy, Guy. And if you looked at any of those New England teams, they always have anchor in the middle of their defense. Whether it was Richard Seymour, whether it was Vince Wilfork, now they got Guy. They got the Lawrence Guy, the guy I'm telling you guys about. At least I believe his name is Lawrence, but I know his last name is Guy. He's a really big guy. No pun intended. But all of the guys, Fletcher Cox, Linval Joseph, any team you want to name that has a dominant defense, most of those teams have beef in the middle of their defense. Brandon Williams with the Baltimore Ravens, Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs, It's a number of guys that are huge in the middle. Ndamukong Suh, whatever team Ndamukong Suh plays for, he always wreaks havoc. Last year he was with the Rams with him and Aaron Donald. This year he's inside with Tampa Bay, and he's helping Shaq Barrett lead the league in sacks because he's wreaking havoc. When they played against the Falcons, Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh ruined the game for us. Matt Ryan had nowhere where he could step up in the pocket and make accurate throws. Even if you look at teams like the New Orleans Saints, they have a big guy in the middle named Onyemata and Shelvin Rankins. Those are two really, really big guys in the middle. So any team you want to look at that has a great defense, most of the time it starts with that anchor in the middle. We have one of our anchors in the middle with Grady Jarrett, but Grady Jarrett really, really needs a running partner. Back in the day when I was telling you guys about Warren Sapp, he had Booger McFarland that was right there in the middle with him. And those guys were able to wreak havoc. And when you have two big pluggers in the middle that can hold the point and that can also penetrate in the backfield and get into the quarterback face, a lot of the times the quarterback is ran into sacks by the guys on the outside. Like I was talking about Shaq Barrett, a lot of the sacks he has this year is because the middle of the pocket is being pushed in by Sue and by Vita Vea, and the quarterback is trying to scramble outside. And when he scrambles outside, you got Shaq Barrett screaming into the backfield. And a lot of the sacks that he has are pretty much easy sacks because Vita Vea and Sue are pushing the line and penetrating so much that the quarterback has nowhere to step up. So he has to try to scramble out to the outside. And when you try to scramble out, that's when those edge rushers really can eat. And I feel like that's one of the biggest problems with our Atlanta Falcons. The year that Vic Beasley really ate, that year he had Grady Jarrett in the middle, and Grady Jarrett had a running partner in Jonathan Babineau. I really think that a lot of people overlook Jonathan Babineau, but Jonathan Babineau was a poor man's Grady Jarrett. He was another guy that was really quick. He wasn't the biggest guy, but he was a guy that could hold the point. He was a guy that had made a lot of tackles for loss in the backfield against running backs, and he was very quick. So he was like Grady Jarrett and the Battleship, Jonathan Babineau, were two guys they pretty much were similar type players. They both were very quick and they could hold the point. And we also had Rashid Hageman causing havoc in the middle, pushing the line, penetrating in the backfield and holding the point, which allows your linebackers as well to go unblocked and they can run sideline to sideline. If you want to know why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to play that cover 2, that Tampa 2, and they were able to win the Super Bowl, the year that they won the Super Bowl with John Gruden, it was because it all started with Warren Sapp and Booger McFarland up front. And when they were able to penetrate in the backfield and wreak havoc, Derek Brooks, their middle linebacker, he could run free and roam sideline to sideline, make tackles for loss, make tackles, and make interceptions because it prevents your centers and your guards from getting to the second level in the run game. And it makes it easy for your linebackers to make tackles when you have those two big pluggers in the middle that's taking up space. So that's what the Falcons is really missing. I really feel like if we can get another dominant player, like if we get Derek Brown, man, it'll be over. If they give us Derek Brown paired with Grady Jarrett in the middle, or if we can get another player that's solid in the middle, like a Vita Vea, or a big guy that can actually hold the point, like a Fletcher Cox or somebody like that. Like we ever get a premier defensive tackle that can play next to Grady Jarrett, man, it will make the job of Vic Beasley and Pat McKinley and all of our pass rushers, it will make their jobs a lot easier. So I know I kind of went on a little bit of a rant at that point, and I'm sorry for going on a rant, but it needed to be said. But you guys tell me what you think about this video in the comment section. Please like, please share, please subscribe to my page if you haven't already. But I really think that the Falcons should seriously think about bringing Vic Beasley back. Like I said, compared to all of his the guys that's come out when he came out in the premier pass rushers in this league, Grady Jarrett is right up there with these guys, man. So Grady Jarrett definitely deserves to get paid. It doesn't have to be a huge contract, but he definitely deserves a contract. And unless another team really knocks it out the ballpark with a number that the Falcons can't match, I really think that it's important that the Falcons try to bring back Vic Beasley. And I really think that the Atlanta Falcons fans should really appreciate what Vic Beasley has done for the city of Atlanta and what he has done for the Atlanta Falcons organization. Like I said, leading the league in sacks is a huge deal. You may not think that in 2016 that played a huge part of us getting to the Super Bowl, but I tell you right now, it played a huge deal in us getting to the Super Bowl because a lot of those sacks that he had, I know one he returned for a touchdown against the Rams that year, but a lot of those plays also were strip sack fumbles where the ball was turned over like he had on Sunday with those 2 strip sacks. So a lot of those put the Atlanta Falcons offense in business on short fields. So we're going to see what Grady Jarrett. We're going to see what Vic Beasley does through the remainder of this season. Let's see if he can get to double-digit sacks. I really think that he's going to get to double digits. I really think within the next 3 games that he can at least get to 10 sacks because that will be only 4 more sacks within these 3 games. I really think he has a chance to get there. But if he balls out against San Francisco and he plays the way that he played Sunday, I really think that Vic Beasley has a chance to get re-signed in the offseason. But I definitely think that he deserves more credit for what he has done in his career so far. And I definitely think that he deserves a new contract just from looking at all of the guys that just got big money in the offseason, like a Preston Smith, a Zadarius Smith, all of those guys that I just named, Shaq Barrett, all of those guys, Jadeveon Clowney. He's done pretty much more than all of those guys in his career so far. So he definitely deserves to be re-signed, but I hope he doesn't really try to break the bank because we are cap strong and we don't have a whole lot of money to pay out. But I hope that we can keep Vic Beasley, even if it's on a shorter deal, like a 3 to 5 year deal. Hopefully we can bring Vic Beasley back. Or even if we can't get him on a long-term deal, hopefully we can bring him back for at least 1 or 2 more seasons to see if he breaks out and, becomes that dominant pass rusher. But I think as a fan base, we just need to be patient with these young players, give these guys a chance to develop. I really feel like that's the big issue with the Atlanta Falcons right now is these young players just need time to develop, especially on our defense. We have a young secondary. We have a lot of young players on this defense in general. So we need to give these guys a chance to develop so we can see, what type of players these guys are really going to turn out to be. But this has been your boy Jew. Like I said, leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think about the video. Let me know what your comments are, whether you think we should keep Vic Beasley around in Atlanta or not. But as always, rise up Falcons Nation. Like I said, man, please like, please share, please subscribe to my page. Please hit that notification bell so you'll know when I'm doing a video. But as always, Falcons Nation, I love you guys, man. I'll holler at y'all in the next video. I'll probably have a video for y'all tomorrow. That'll be the breakdown for the pregame show of the Atlanta Falcons versus the San Francisco 49ers, which we take on Sunday at 4:25 Eastern. But that's been your boy Jew. I'm out. I'll holler at y'all in the next video. Y'all have a great day. Peace.